Hello, welcome to my part 2 of my video series on the little tweak that I want to make in our TCV system. In the last video, I think I presented a very compelling argument of why we needed to do it, why we need to change our distribution so that the 3-year contract is the norm. And in this video, we're going to investigate how can we tweak it. We'll look at some actual numbers from the NFL. And we kind of see what happens in the NFL. One of the big arguments in our TCV thread has kind of been, a player who is signed long term is more likely to get a higher percentage of guaranteed money. So we're going to investigate if that's true in the NFL. But before we do all that, let's just look at some numbers. So, it's been a long-standing precedent in the AFFL that if something happens most of the time in the NFL, that it will happen all of the time in the AFFL. Just because it's impossible to simulate all the variations. So let's kind of look at some of these numbers. First of all, right now, as of when I completed all these data, there are 1,726 players in the NFL. And 1,195 of them have a signing bonus. That's almost 70%. So that means 70% of the NFL players receive guaranteed money. So we kind of have that. So basically, it's safe to say that most NFL players receive some guaranteed money. So in the AFFL, all of our players do. That's fine. In the NFL, in the AFFL, we give 10% guaranteed money. That's what it used to be the SP, it's now called the cap hit. So in the NFL, the actual number is 14%. So I think we're pretty close. I actually did all this data compiling before the 53-man rosters, and in the off season, that number is actually 11%. So 11% in the off season, 14% in the regular season. That makes sense because you're going to be cutting these guys that you didn't want to give guaranteed money to anyway. So anyway, it's an average of 14%. We're close with our 10%. But let's look at that a little more closely. So, a majority of NFL players have guaranteed money in signing bonuses. At least 70%. So let's look at that a little closer. Let's see if those percentages change at all per length of contract. As a quick note here, as I mentioned in the last video, NFL players can have up to an 8-year contract. So just so we can compare between the two leagues, I just took anything 5 years in length or longer, and I just made them all a 5-year contract, or you can think of it as a 5+ year contract. I just did that so when we look at this data, we can kind of compare between the two leagues easily because we've got the same basis to compare. So let's take a look at these numbers. So as we can see, only 21% of the players with 1-year contracts have signing bonuses. 55% of players with a 2-year contract, so on and so forth. So you can see most players with a 1-year contract do not have signing bonuses, and most players of the other contract lengths do have signing bonuses. So that's actually going to be the basis of one of my first recommendations. But let's just look at the graph. Some of you might be saying, oh, well, the 4-year contract lengths with the new rookie contracts are skewing that, and that's why that's 97%. And you may be right, but let's just look at a graph of this. So when we graph this out, when you graph the percentage of players who have guaranteed money in the form of a signing bonus, and you graph that to the length of their contract, you can clearly see positive correlation with a strong R-squared value. That means that Most likely this variation, the fact that they have guaranteed money, comes from the length of their contract as opposed to some other variable. So this leads me to my first recommendation. So my first recommendation is that next year for the 2013 season, that in the AFFL, there's no signing bonus, no SP, no cap hit, no guaranteed money, whatever you want to call it, for any player with a 1-year contract. That's going to do a few things. First, it's going to, hopefully, it's going to move our distribution away from the 5-year contracts and more towards the 1-year contract. Hopefully, we'll even see a little spike in those 1-year contracts. The second thing it'll do is it's going to make bye week replacements a lot easier for me. That way I don't have to do anything with those contracts. They're just 1-year contracts, and I don't even have to put a contract into the system. You'll still auction for them. They'll go in there. They'll go onto your roster for whatever your whatever the salary that you won the auction at. And then 2, if you decide to cut them after a week or 2 or 3, that's fine. I don't have to do any contracts for any player in the league for 1 year. That saves me a lot of work. Obviously, you'll just be paying 1/12 of their salary that you win them for that week. So anyway, I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a good starting point as we go on to the next step, and that's to see if these the cap hits, signing bonuses, SPs, let's see if those increase with the length of contract. So, this is the great debate. There's an element in the AFFL that believe that the longer you sign a player, the more you should pay in guaranteed money. And then there's an element that doesn't believe that. I'm of the element that believes that you should. So let's see if that happens in the NFL. Again, these are numbers straight from NFL data. I've given you the data, I've given you access to the data, so in any scientific statistical analysis, this is all open to peer review. You all have the data. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just graph every single contract in the NFL, take their signing bonus, divide that by the total contract value to get the percentage of the total contract value as guaranteed money, and let's just chart it out according to contract length. So here is every percentage of signing bonus per contract length in the NFL. Obviously, there is a lot of variation here. There's also a lot of zeros. However, even despite those two things, there still tends to be an upward trend. So let's go one step further, as we always do. Let's just average all of these. Let's average all of these contracts all the signing bonus percentages by year and graph that and see what we come up with. So, as you can see here, there is a direct positive correlation between the length of the contract, and the guaranteed percentage of money. That means the longer a team signs a player, the more likely he's to get more guaranteed money. Again, I just don't know how you can dispute this evidence. This is just, a hypothesis that I had, and I analyzed the data, and it's exactly what it shows. So we are going to increase SP percentages as the length of contract increases in the AFFL. I will talk about How we will do that next. So, we've come to the final recommendation. First, I want to apologize for taking so long to get this part 2 out. All the video up until this point was actually done before October. Actually, well before October, but since then I have moved to South Carolina, so it took me a little while to get up and running here. Anyway, let's get on to my recommendation, and sorry about the delay. I know you guys were so eagerly awaiting this video. Obviously, the first recommendation was 1-year contracts will have no guaranteed money whatsoever. That's pretty easy. I think that's a good deal. And now let's go on and talk about how we're going to come up with the numbers for the 2, 3, 4, and 5-year contracts. So to determine what percentage of guaranteed money each length of contract will get, we basically go back to this graph. It's a well-known thing in mathematics. I know not a lot of you know much about math, but to find y, you plug in x when you have a function. There you see that little calculation there, that equation. It has x and y in it. Or an easy way to do is just look where that diagonal line crosses. So at here, a 1-year contract is about 5%. However, we have to remember this isn't the graph that we're going to use for one big reason, because the 1-year contracts, which we already decided aren't going to have these guaranteed money, guaranteed money is included in this, and for all the other years, basically any contract with no guaranteed money is included in it. So basically we're going to redo this graph, but we're going to set the 1-year contracts to 0, and then we're going to take out the zeros from the remaining years. So that graph looks like this. This graph shows what happens when you take all the guaranteed money out of those 1-year contracts, and when you take all the zeros basically out of the 2, 3, 4, and 5-year contracts. Obviously, there's a lot more variation in those actual numbers, but you see that line of regression still shows that guaranteed contract percentages still increase even when you do this. So when you follow this line, basically it means that a 2-year contract should have 10% of guaranteed money, a 3-year should have 15%, 4-year should have 20%, and a 5-year contract should have 25% guaranteed. As you can see, the new numbers here are a lot less than the old numbers that I recommended here. Maybe that was part of the argument, was that 40% guaranteed was just too much. I'm actually glad I went and did these numbers because I think a sweep between 0 and 25% is, I think that's fair. A 5-year contract, you're going to guarantee a quarter of that money. So I think that's fair. I'm really glad that I did this because I just don't think there's any way that you can argue that guaranteed money, the percentages, I don't think it's impossible to argue that they don't increase as the length of contract goes up. So I think maybe me, by dropping these percentages, will make the idea a little more acceptable to owners. One question that did come up was, what do we do with these restructured players when you restructure their contract? Basically, the idea behind a restructured contract is that a player will give the team the hometown discount and will take a little less money for a long-term contract. So that being said, he would probably take a little less guarantee. So we'll just say that any restructured contracts will just have that 3-year percentage or 15% guaranteed. I think that's a good compromise all around. Also, I know this isn't popular, but I think we're going to have to implement some sort of player performance bonus, and there is a thread on the message boards about that. The reason I want to do that is because All these bonuses that we've discussed and used in this data were strictly signing bonuses. It doesn't bring in the workout bonuses, the roster bonuses, the performance bonuses. It's only a fraction of the guaranteed money that these guys get. So by just adding, I think the most a player performance would be $1.50 per player. So I don't think an extra $1.50 on a $140 cap, that's 1%. That's still a mere fraction of what some of these players get as far as their other bonuses. So we will go ahead and implicate that next year as well. Anyway, sorry this took so long in both length and calendar length to put out. I hope this isn't met with too much resistance. I think it's going to make a great addition to the league. Hopefully it will help lower our the distributions basically. Hopefully this will shift those distributions more towards the left, towards the 1, 2, and 3 year contracts than having 75% of AFFL contracts be 5 years in length. Anyway, with that, good luck in the playoffs, and we'll talk to you later, guys. Thanks.